Questions are always the easiest. Can I get you to say and spell your first and last name for me?
Sure. Heather Stautmeister, Heather. Stautmeister, Stautmeister.
Talk to me about Family Ties. Why did you decide to open up here?
Well, Family Ties was established because we saw a need to serve especially young people. A lot of times in victimization, adults are the primary victim, and kids are kind of sometimes really overlooked. And so we recognized that we really needed to have a concentration on children and then also serve adult victims as well. And so Family Ties was born.
That was what, 17 years ago about?
17 years on February 28th, so we're right there.
What are some of the services you all offer? I know it's probably a laundry list of so much you do.
There are a lot of things that we do. We have several different areas that we cover. First and foremost is going to be victim services, and inclusive of that is domestic violence, homicide, child abuse, sexual assault, and really any type of crime that can occur to somebody. They could come here and get support. Probably the services we provide the most is going to be focused on crime victims for domestic violence and sexual violence, child abuse, and unfortunately homicide is rising. Our services include counseling, crisis intervention, advocacy, accompaniment, also information and referral to other services. However, there's really limited services. Even though we're in Harris County, we're in the very furthest northwest side that you can get, and it's pretty limited, and our coverage area is really huge and vast. We cover Waller County and northwest Harris County, so all the way from Tomball all the way across to Katy on the other side of I-10. And we serve northwest Harris County, Waller County, and Austin counties.
And are you one of dozens, a few services that offers the services you all provide here?
There are some services probably about within 50 or 60 miles, but none of them do all of the things that we do, and many of them do not serve children. And so we're one of the few within about 50 or 60 miles that does provide services for children as well. And that's provided through licensed staff, because they're at developmental stages, and we want to make sure that we're giving them the best resources and support in a crisis that's will really help them move through what we call providing hope through healing.
You also mentioned homicide. Are those cases involving partners within domestic violence incidents specifically?
We actually have had several that are partners, and not all of them, but probably about 75% of the homicides that we see do involve family members.
And how do you all offer your assistance there?
Well, a lot of times we're the first call, especially if somebody's needing crisis intervention or immediate support. And once we see that client, we really try to hand carry them from an immediate intake by a therapist so that they tell their story one time. And then once they move through that process, we are client-driven safety. So our goal is to provide services, and they get to drive. They tell us what they need, and then we try to make sure that they're provided with the things that they need. And when somebody's going through any of those issues, whether it's homicide, domestic violence, sexual violence, sometimes they need a new place to stay. Sometimes they need locks changed. Sometimes they just need, in addition to counseling, they're like, I don't know what to do for my kids. I can't talk to them about this. And so we help them find ways to talk to their kids about the issues. And then we also offer counseling so that kids can share things that they probably may not share with their parent because they're protecting their parent. So it's an interesting dynamic in the different services that we provide. We do also provide temporary housing. We do have some funding for some of our, I'm going to go back, sorry. We do have funding for assisting individuals through HCDVCC's grants for family violence and freedom from violence, as well as the United Way. And these are flexible funds that we can use to put somebody up in a hotel temporarily. One thing that we're missing, and that's one thing that we're going to talk about a little bit today, is we used to have a transitional housing program that would serve somebody for up to a year with either not only their housing but also utilities. And many times people will say, oh, a whole year? You would serve somebody for a whole year for that? But a lot of times people don't come back to think that if, my family member was, if my child or my husband or my spouse was murdered, or I experienced a sexual assault and I can't sleep at night because I have to stay awake all night because it might happen again. All of those mental pieces that go on there, or I need to take care of my kids. My kids are struggling and I'm getting called from the school every day to come get them, and it has cost me my employment. And people don't really always understand that.
Yeah.
And so these are just invaluable resources. And unfortunately, because of the funding cuts that we've experienced from BOCA this year, we did have to eliminate that. And because we're the rural Northwest Harris County, the very most rural you can get, we do not have those resources out here. We do not have the transitional HUD housing, and we're not really able to compete for those funds at the level at which, downtown Houston with that density can.
We'll get back to transitional housing.
Absolutely.
You also mentioned you all get referrals. Are you guys getting calls from law enforcement after they've been at a scene or a situation, say we need to get this person some help, and they call you all? Is that how the process moves about?
That is one of the ways. We also receive, not only from law enforcement, the judicial system, the schools actually provide an incredible amount of resources or referrals to us so that we can help provide resources. We also are collaborators with many other organizations such as food pantries and places of that. And so we get a lot of referrals in. Then also, I mentioned HCDVCC, which is the Harris County Domestic Violence Coordinating Council. They also provide their coordinating services, and when they have things here in our area, in our coverage area, they make sure to pull those referrals and hand deliver those folks to us.
So let's talk about the funding with, the Violent Crimes Act?
It is the Violence of Crime Act fund, and I think the best way that has been explained to us and the best way that people can understand it in general is that when individuals commit crimes, they have to pay fines, and those fines funnel into a victim fund at the federal level. And during COVID, nothing was prosecuted for almost 3 years in some cases. And so because of that, money quit funneling into that fund. And so now COVID is catching up with us. I know people are probably tired of talking about COVID. However, now it is catching up to this fund. And those federal funds are then dispersed down to the state level. And for the last year or two, the state had been trying to cover what the federal couldn't provide for programs like ours. And of course, Family Ties is not the only program that is struggling. Actually, programs across the nation, but we are more privy to understand what programs are struggling here. One of the additional issues that happens is once it's distributed to the state, our what we call our lobbyists or our leadership at the state level is Texas Council on Family Violence, Texas Association of Sexual Assault, and they really talk to the legislators for our programs and say, hey, this is what we're seeing. This is what our programs are experiencing. These are their needs. And the state actually committed that they would make sure that there was stable funding for programs, that we would have stable funding. What happened though is once it gets, and I don't think it was intentional, I think it's just, intentional or not, it didn't turn out that way for some programs, because once it gets to the COG level and each region, for our region, we're on a ranking system. So if for some reason somebody fell below a ranking, even if you're providing great service, you may have gotten left in the cold. And I know we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars. We're not just talking about a couple of $100 or a couple of $1,000, but hundreds of thousands of dollars that have been removed. And then in addition to that, we're facing this FY25 year with a potential 40% cut.
So how much resources have you all lost or will lose because of this funding cuts?
Well, about 207,000 were committed to our transitional scattered site program here. And so that program, unfortunately, was the first that we had to cut. We are about 8 staff short now. And all of my staff are cross-trained, but I never intended their cross-training to mean that they had to actually fill multiple roles.
So this is your staff is wearing many hats, or your staff members are wearing many hats?
Every one of my staff is not only doing their job, but is also covering bleed over from funding that we lost, including myself. And I know my staff knows that I never ask them to do anything I'm not willing to do. So here at the Mueller House, which is our 12-bed, 12-bath facility for transitional young adults, which is 17 to 22, I've covered shifts. After working all day, I've covered a night shift. And many of my staff have done the same, even though they worked all day. Yeah. And so I think that the biggest issue is that this isn't even just about our program only, it's about every program and the vital needs of victims and what victims are losing. And I think that's the most important piece of all of this is there's only so much you can do, and our clients are losing. They're on a wait list now. I have prided myself in 17 years that we have never had a wait list. And sometimes that meant I worked 14 hours a day or what have you, just to make sure that they made that first connection, because it's very difficult for victims to ever ask for help to begin with. So we don't want them to ask for help and have to wait a month until they can be seen. We want to at least get them in the door, set up an expectation, let them know that if something comes up in between a time, that they can always call back in and we'll figure out a situation for them. But we are now at almost a month out. I am still committed to making sure that first contact is immediate. And I'm still, and my staff, not just me, but my staff are putting in the time to make sure that at least that first contact occurs. So I think that's one of the biggest things, is that victims will not truly be getting timely service. And for victims, timely service is of the essence. As soon as that victimization starts, that's an opportunity for them to have immediate support and know that, okay, I can do this. I'm going to be okay. My kids are going to be okay. Our family's going to be okay. This is going to be hard, but I'm not walking by myself. And I think that's what all programs that I am grateful and privileged to be akin to in our community, the greater community of the state of Texas, is that our goal, we're passionate about making sure that we can provide for victims the things that they need. And this is a need that's not being met.
Do you believe, because of these budget cuts across the state, across the nation really, as you reference here, do you think some of these victims will have to walk alone because of these budget cuts?
We know already that they're having to walk alone.
How does that make you feel?
It's very difficult for me. Our transitional housing program, we recently had an individual who had come in for services through one of our other programs and had been identified as being a victim of domestic violence, and we couldn't even offer her the transitional housing which she needed. She had 3 littles under the age of, I believe, 3. And unfortunately, sometimes that is how violence occurs, is by maintaining somebody in the home through children. And unfortunately, and of course, not all of the evidence is out there, and we don't want to speak to that, but we had a child that passed. And I cried about that actually personally for several days, and that was just a really hard realization for my staff. And we had a huge conversation about how we can only do what we can do, and they understand that, but we could have done something in the past with that funding. With the loss of that funding, we could have, and maybe that loss of that child could have been avoided. So I think that how it makes me feel, it makes me want to fight harder to make sure that victims' voices are heard,
Yeah.
and that their needs are not only heard by us, but by those who can truly have control and make a difference.
I know the work you all do isn't easy, but you guys wake up every day and come do it regularly, day in, day out, and now you're having these cuts. How does all this, it's, to me, just hearing from you, it seems overwhelming. How do you push through to continue doing the work?
So you're just trying to make me cry now. Honestly, I love the work that we do, and I have an incredibly committed staff. And I think that people don't wake up one morning and say, I think I'm going to do this work for my life. There are reasons that we all do this work. And everyone is touched by it, even if they don't know. And that keeps us moving. When the first funding cut, we lost $500,000 for this year. We kept part of the grant, but that was a huge piece for our program. It was a third of our budget, almost a third of our budget. And we met as a staff and as leadership, and we said, we can cover this until we can, get to the next year, because hopefully that funding's going to continue to increase and we'll recover. But unfortunately, now we're being told that potentially there is going to also be a 40% cut by our region on top of the cuts that have already occurred.
So on top of the 30%, nearly 30% of your budget that's already been cut for this year, you're hearing that there may be an additional 40% that may be coming in the near future.
We are told to expect a 40% cut. And a lot of times, one of the things that we are hearing is that, there's a lot of new programs out there. These older programs really should have been able to secure funding that could take care of this. You should have used it as seed money. But you can only do that if something doesn't grow. Our agency in and of itself, which is what I can speak to, is that we have grown every year almost 100%. We have doubled our numbers almost every year. And we don't have the infrastructure, the huge businesses out here that can truly fund into our area. Mm-hmm. So it is really difficult to maintain that. And also, we just know cost of living moves up every year. So you have numbers increase, you have cost of living increase, you have jobless. And I know we keep hearing that the job, people, there's jobs, but we have a lot of people trying to receive jobs. And even if they're able to secure a job, it is not manageable. It is not able to truly suffice them and truly take care of their living. And I think that is going to be an issue out here for a long time because of transportation. We don't have the mobility that people in the Houston area have. We provide a lot of, one thing we didn't mention is we do provide transport. Mm-hmm. For our clients, if it's to any type of appointment, if it's to the children's assessment for sexual assault interviews, all of that, we will cover that. If they need an appointment and they need to get to that appointment, we will try to find that transportation, and we've even used Uber because our staff is thin, and so we've used Uber, which is a really expensive way to support victims.
We're in the Mueller House. Talk to us about the services you provide. You've referenced it. It's for young adults here.
Okay. The Mueller House was established because the high school principal came to me and said, Heather, I have all these seniors dropping out and they're homeless. And so they're just dropping out and they're going and getting a job, or some of them are living in their cars. And we had some young people living at the Loves, and they were going there, they were staying in there, taking a shower, walking across to the high school, and he said, I can provide a washing machine, I can provide a shower for them, but I can't provide that. And so at the time, I said, well, okay, let's see what we can figure out. And we found the Mueller House grant, and we actually wrote for the Mueller Inc. grant, and they actually put the structure up for us. We did have to finish it out, which is also an extra expense that we took on prior to the huge funding cuts. And so I'm one of the things you asked was, what services do we provide? This is a wraparound. We pull these kids in. A lot of them are emotionally stunted. Some of them are academically stunted. We encourage them to complete high school and provide every opportunity for them to do that, and that is actually a requirement if they want to stay here, is they either have to complete high school, take their GED, and get gainful employment. And they can stay here for up to a year, and it's ages 17 to 22, and we provide all of their financial management. A lot of these kids come in here and they think that, okay, I got 20, and they spend 20. And so, because that's how they've lived their life. And so we're providing financial management, job readiness. We are creating a mentor program and working with businesses, because a lot of the kids, they get in this spot because they don't have family support and they have no clue what they're going to do.
Yeah.
And we want to avoid them becoming trafficking victims. And unfortunately, that is what we were seeing. We were seeing people at Love's, and we had some kids get in trucks with folks and head out. And so part of our mission here is to, eliminate that opportunity and eliminate the opportunity for them to be trafficked, but also provide them an opportunity to really get in a place on their feet and have that guidance and structure.
So because of these budget cuts, one of the first things that went was the transitional housing that you all offered.
Right, the scattered site. Mm-hmm.
What impact did you all see from that?
Well, we've seen clients, just like the story I shared with you about the young mother that now has a lost child, and also many of the parents that we just talked to a lady the other day that's living in her car. Mm-hmm. And she can't move in here. She's 37. And so this isn't for that, but she's like, well, I guess if I could live in my car for 4 more months, I might have enough money to put down for down payment. But one of the things that comes with living in your car, and especially living in your car with kids, is it strips you. It strips you of your dignity. It strips you of the ability to feel like you're a human sometimes. And it certainly can damage people emotionally to feel like they have to just keep moving and they don't ever get a solid footing.
Okay, that one was definitely not.
Who's closing?
She's gonna be out there for a minute.
Ask him if.
He's there.
Who is that?
I don't know. He's doing that dirt back there.
Okay.
Yeah, he's probably gonna be doing that one.
Okay.
Do we close it? Let's just close it.
Is that going to really damage your?
It's hold on. Let me just.
I can go and talk to him. You want me to talk to him?
No, because he's got hired to do it, and he's here, and he's going to do what he's going to do.
Let me just.
And we-
a little light to it.
Unfortunately, we haven't secured that land yet, but
Okay. Well, that'll do fine. Let me just see what yours is.
I missed the food and nutrition part. Is there anything else I missed on the Mueller House, Rose?
I think
Job
Okay.
readiness.
That's a job readiness.
Mhm.
get a shot from this side.
Do you think people really understand the services you and other programs like this across the state provide?
I really don't think that, even though there's a lot of effort put out to spread the word and do that engagement in the community, I think until somebody is face to face with that issue, it's not that they don't care, it's just that they truly don't understand the complexity of issues of domestic violence and sexual violence, child abuse, and the generational piece that comes with that. I think a lot of people think that it's only happens in lower socioeconomic stratuses, and this is not true. Mm-hmm. It happens across the board. And I think as people learn about our organization, and I think that's why we've seen the uptick, because this isn't our only location. We also have a location in Cypress, and that we've been working on that program for about, I think we've been there about 6 or 7 years, and the number of individuals that have come, and the reason that we even set it up there is because we have people from Cypress coming here, and they might come 1 or 2 times, but the drive was difficult, and so we decided, you know what, we just need to go ahead and set up an office there, because there was nothing, even along that whole stretch of 290, which is just have a plethora of businesses. and homes and subdivisions and schools, that there was no services there.
What impact do you think the loss of funding for your program and just programs in the state in general will have on victims?
The biggest impact is having to wait to be served, because like I said earlier, it's hard enough for them to come, but then to have to wait for additional assistance for this and this and this and this, whatever their needs are. If they're not assisted, you know, if somebody needs a house payment, or they're going to be evicted, or any of those issues, well, if they come to you and you're like, well, we have a waiting list, so we can't even see you yet. They can't even bring that. We don't even know that's a need yet. And if those needs aren't being met, then they don't come. And then as far as kids, I get them down the road. And that's the worst part. It's because a lot of times parents, they want to help their children. They want to make sure their children are okay. But if they have to wait a month or two, the kid seems okay. And then within the next year or so, we end up with a child back in our office for cutting. And I think it also, even though it's not true, I think it feels to a victim like we don't care, which is not true. We do care and we want to serve, but there's only so many hours in the day, and there's only so many hours one person can work. So unfortunately, you know, that is the outcome.
Yeah.